The session of today is all about what is changed now that AI has entered powerfully our lives from the private practice owner's perspective. The way you used to generate patients to your practice, to attract patients to your practice, has now changed a little bit, and we will be looking together how we can adapt and, if possible, get the most out of this massive change that is coming. And let me see if this moves. Yeah. First of all, a little introduction about me. So some of you already know me. I am the director of a pure play SEO agency, which means that the only thing that we do is optimizing websites. It's a beautiful boutique team of 8 employees. We're based in West London, and I personally have been doing SEO since 2011, and it has been a little bit of a very, very strange sequence of changes in the way Google has been running the algorithms. So I have seen over the history some of the major changes, all of the strange names, the panda, the penguin, the hummingbird. It sounded very cute, but they were actually very, very nasty kind of consequences. So I know that this is one of those historic moments that we're living now. And we were lucky enough to live all of these very, very strange moments in history through the years. And now we're actually witnessing another one. And we will be able to say, yes, I lived through the introduction of AI in our lives and how it changed everything at the same time. So, in this discussion today, we will be talking a little bit of how this introduction of AI tools has changed from a doctor's private practice owner point of view, but also how it still works, how some things can still be harnessed in your favor. So let's do a little bit of a piece of history, looking back at how it used to be. And as an example in this presentation, I'm using one of our clients, and she agreed of being one of the examples in the presentation. She is Dr. Susan Alexander, the president of the Independent Doctors Federation. So we've got here history through the time, before and after. So how do patients approach the search of some sort of medical support for them? They can start from an informative query, the ones that can be exemplified as I want to know. So they have a question and those usually starting with a W, why, when, where, how. And those questions, they used to be searching on Google, finding a possible response in the form of a link to a website. It was usually a blog post, an article, a piece of news that was giving them advice. So they would find this link and they would decide, I click on the link, I open the result, I read what I can find. If I like the content, if I like the tone of voice, if I like the approach, if this seems engaging and trustworthy, I might decide to contact and engage with this doctor, possibly book an appointment. Alternatively, they might have been reaching your site because of a transactional query. So they weren't looking for information. They already knew that they wanted some support. So they were looking exactly for a type of medical practitioner. They would search for the type if they didn't know the name of the person. They were searching for the specialty. They would be searching for exactly the type and the location that they wanted. They would find some elements usually the map pack, which is so important. We'll go through that in a little moment. But they would find basically, again, the website of the practitioner, and very similarly to the informative query, they would check the site, see if it's convincing, reassuring. They would click and possibly book an appointment and start an initial level of conversation with you. And then things changed, and AI started to come into play. So since the beginning of the year, we have noticed these nice little AI overviews popping up at the very, very top of our screens. So when we are now looking for an informative query, when your prospective patients are looking for an informative query, that kind of why, when, how, where, they don't immediately find your website, the link to the blog post anymore. They find this nice little summary, this box featured at the very top of their screen, which already summarizes in short the best type of advice for them. And as human beings, we all share the same traits, that we try, if possible, to follow the path of least resistance, the path of least effort. So if something is easy and fast, generally we try definitely to follow that. So what happens when people are finding everything nicely summarized like this is that they don't need to actually click the link and follow the website. They will find all the information that they want in this nice little summary here, and that's it. They usually don't even need to engage. Click the link, check the website, and go on and have a meaningful interaction and possibly become patients. If all they were looking for was a piece of information, they're finding the information without even entering your website. Google is retaining all of the traffic in itself, which is in the end the core scope of Google, is to actually hoard as much of these traffic and activity as possible. So they're retaining everything, not letting anyone go from this point onward. So you will experience a drastic, you might already have noticed a drastic loss in traffic. And we are talking big numbers. This slide here is from April this year, right? SEO 2025, April. They were already correlating in April. This is the slides from one of the speakers at the event. They were already correlating a loss of about 30% of traffic before and after comparing. So this is Ahrefs that they run this research. And if we look at numbers now, it's actually higher than that. People have, particularly people used to have very high rankings, very good results. They were shocked and worried. We still all are a little bit worried because this is something that we're witnessing now, and it's happening under our noses now. A dramatic loss in traffic because of people just staying on Google and not following through, going onto the websites. So what happens now instead in case of a transactional query? So people who are still, instead of having this I want to know purpose, they have an I want to do kind of intent. If they are still searching for the type of specialty, medical specialty, they are still finding the AI overview on top. And if you're doing a good job, if you've done a good job, and you're also a little bit lucky, you will be featured up there, which is a very, very prominent position to be, but not on your own anymore. So you will be endorsed together with some of the major other players in your industry. So as a sort of quick, curious exercise to do, I'd recommend trying and seeing who is currently being featured up there for the type of things that you want to be found. So if not you, then who ads is being found up there. So you all can name some of your biggest competitors. But if you see who's actually doing it and succeeding up there, it can be quite an insightful discovery to do. So even if they find you, you've got your features, you're together with others, and it's interesting to see why AI Overview in this case has decided to feature some of these. If you see, for example, this practitioner has been chosen because of the number of reviews and the quality of the reviews. So that's the kind of criteria evaluation quality that Google AI Overviews is doing to say, these are good results to present to my audience, because Google's final interest in the end is giving the best possible kind of user experience to the user. So one of my users want to find the best practitioner. Here's who they are. Why did I choose them? Because these are the most endorsed. So they must be the ones who are giving the best type of customer experience. So that brings back to the importance of having your Google business profiles as polished as possible, with all of the possible treatments that you provide and connections, opening times, and trying constantly as much as possible to collect reviews in there. I know there are various other platforms in which reviews tend to be collected, from Doctify, Top Doctors. There's plenty of these places in which patient reviews are left. But holding them, making sure that you're also receiving them and featuring them onto your practice Google business profile can be incredibly valuable in terms of standing out in the map pack, which hasn't disappeared. So AI overviews have gone up. Results, the normal blue link, the one that we used to see, has been pushed down. In between, we still have our map features, and they're going nowhere because people are using them. They're using to find directions, they're using to navigate the city. So the map pack isn't going anywhere, and it's even more important to make sure that you're there as polished as can be, because those information are also taken to be used by AI overviews. So after finding you there, they probably need still to get the treatment, because it's a transactional quiz, it's not just an informative one. And as it happened before, if that's the reason why they were following and they were checking your website, they will then probably still contact you. So the loss of traffic that has been registered is mainly around these sort of informative queries that used to drive the attention of the previous users before. So is it all bad if we're featured in AI overviews? We might think it is, because we are losing traffic, and it's really irritating to see those stats going down on analytics. But in the end, this is one example of one of our features of our agency. It kind of looks flattering to be there, to be endorsed, to have this nice spotlight on you, and seeing how Google details all the services that you do and all of that. It's definitely, aside from vanity, there is an element of brand awareness and brand reputation. Because when a patient is choosing the practice to be treated at, definitely this makes an influence. Seeing that Google is endorsing so powerfully and giving quite this big spotlight on you is definitely an element of pride and trust. It's that sort of inherited trust that is transmitted. It's like a very strong recommendation by Sama. At the same time, we might be paying it with a decrease in traffic, and we know that it's at the moment a sort of double-edged sword. What we also know is that we've got no choice absolutely about this. So this is something that has been implemented and rolled out. It's there, and we can only adapt and trying to get the most out of our current situation in there. But Together with this, there is an interesting phenomenon that is appearing, and it might bring a little glimpse of hope as for the lost traffic for informative query. Because together with AI overviews in the second half of last year, we have seen the democratization of all the other AI tools, the so-called LLMs, large language models. So these are just the most popular: ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity. They have now different stages of adoption into different levels of the population, but they have now entered almost everybody's life. And people are starting to use them for the most various types of tasks, but they are actually also starting to use them for search. So we see that people are using these instruments for search online and trying to find the results. And they're becoming kind of tempted to use them in alternative to Google, because the results that we get when we search with an LLM are very different from the results that we get when we search from Google, because they are contextual. This means that the results that we get are different. The ones that you get are different from the ones that I get. If you and me are searching for something using Google, we will get the same results, the very same results, unless we're searching from a different location. So geolocalization has an element of difference in that. But otherwise, the results, the famous top 10, don't change that much. We will see the same results in Google. On AI tools such as ChatGPT, instead, if you and me are searching for something, say, for example, I don't know, we're searching for a pair of trainers, and we are detailing our needs, because it's more conversational, the type of use that we do with AI tools. So we will be saying that, for example, I've got a knee pain, and you're training for a marathon. The type of results that we will find are radically different in this case, because the search wrapped around the AI tool will give indication exactly with the context that we're searching. So you will find shoes that are more trainers, they're more suitable for someone who's training for a marathon, and I will find trainers that are more suitable for someone who's got a knee pain or inflammation. So people are getting really hooked at using these tools for search because they're finding something that is custom made for them, it's tailored around them. So we are now seeing a spike, a kind of rebalancing of the lost traffic coming from these kind of AI tools. And it's where the future is going to be. So we need to definitely make sure that we are there and we're ready to be found in this kind of way. And how do they search these LLMs? Well, there is one key difference. That is that on Google, we are more tempted to search with quite abrupt keywords like that, unless we're doing voice search. If we're using a voice agent, Alexa, then in that case, it was already more conversational from the start. But now that we are using LLMs, we are actually having conversations, and the LLMs themselves in their search, they are searching with more words. So the results are much more laser focused and fine-tuned into exactly what we need. Say, for example, I want to have a baby and I have a congenital heart disease. On Google, I might be searching for a cardiologist here in London. If I'm having a conversation with my large language model, I would say that I want somebody who can support me in my pregnancy with congenital heart disease. So that's the type of results that we receive will be exactly tailor-made unto the subspecialty of that branch of medicine that particularly can be supportive for my needs, which on our ends as practitioners brings us into realizing what is important to make sure that our websites feature so that we can be the best possible match when somebody needs our services. So going as in detail as possible as to the types of conditions in the content and having explanations there kind of conversational in tone, so not talking necessarily frequently asked questions, but this kind of Q&A presentation formatting in the content can help. And there are other little elements that help when we are considering how the LLMs work from a search point of view. First of all, they don't all just rely on Google. ChatGPT, for example, is wrapped around Bing because it belongs, 49% of OpenAI belongs to Microsoft, and Microsoft's own search engine is Bing. Bing used to be the small neglected child of the search engines ever since forever. Nobody really was caring much about that. And now they're rediscovering it, and they're starting to really be worried about how can I rank on Bing, how can I be, and Bing, since always they used to have the Bing Search Console, but everybody was just using Google Search Console. And now they're starting to use Bing Search Console as well, worrying how can I make sure that I'm up there. Do they differ, these search engines? Yes, on some little nuances they differ, but in general, these search engines all consist of the same three main macro elements, in which you have the index as this massive library of websites. You can imagine the biggest library of the world, in which every website is in there, and every page of every website. And if you think that now, since AI has been introduced and democratized, every second we have 3 new websites being published because people find it so incredibly easy to just churn out vanilla flavored content with AI. So the introduction of websites on the web is growing in an even more exponential rate. So the index is kind of flooded with websites as of now. The second element that makes search engines are the crawlers or crawler bots, spider bots, and they're all of those tiny little programs that keep scanning the web all the time. And they're programs, so they have a basic programming in terms of a checklist. They don't see a website as you would do, all colorful and full of design and colors. They see a website as a boring string of code. And in that code, they have a programming to check exactly what's in specific parts. So let me see what's in the main heading, H1. And you have no idea how many websites we audit, and the owners think they have headings coded as headings, and instead they are titles and they're coded as subheadings. So when the crawler bot is checking site, it says, what's in the H1? Oh, there's nothing in the H1. I'm confused. Because no signal is coming from the site, and so no signal can be given to Google, and they cannot make an association between somebody searching for something and your site has got that as a strong signal. People, they don't know, they don't realize, but they're kind of playing hide and seek with Google. They are hiding important elements. They don't know about that because they haven't looked under the bonnet of their websites. And I'm just introducing it here at the end. You will see a QR code which allows you to get free scan of your website. It's not automated, it's human-made. And we will be scanning the site exactly as Google does. So it can be insightful for you to find out things that maybe weren't aware as well. And then you can decide to do whatever you want with that knowledge. We do believe that knowledge is power. So if you realize, if you find out that some of the things aren't there, then you are on a stronger position than to get somebody, it might be your developer, it might be somebody that you know, to actually rectify it and get closer to where you want to be. So the index, the crawlers, and another funny thing that you might not know is that these crawler bots, they have a very limited amount of time allocated to scanning and crawling every website. It's called crawl budget. And we don't realize that sometimes hoarding and accumulating content onto our websites might come in the way of utilizing, maximizing this crawl budget, because people don't even realize, particularly after having those websites for some years, they keep accumulating content assets without realizing that they might have something that is a little bit outdated, that hasn't been checked in a while. I still see from time to time some references to pandemic procedures and COVID precautions, things that have no reason to be found now. They're not helping the user anymore. They're just there and they're wasting your crawl budget because if you have that amount of time, seconds usually, to be dedicated to crawling entirely your website and you're wasting it crawling things that are not really important anymore, you might not have enough time to crawl the really valuable things. So one thing to keep in mind is from time to time, say once a year, to actually audit your content and see, is it still valuable? Does it still portray up-to-date information to my users, or would I feel a little bit embarrassed if they find it now and they think that it's something that is updated and it shouldn't be there? So it's important to be sure that you're not wasting the crawl budget that you have available and regularly, say once a year at least, to make sure that what you have is really worth having. Otherwise, it's better to get rid of it and not waste any of your crawler budget in that. The final piece of of what makes a search engine such is the algorithm. The thing that tends to change all the time. It's what actually scores and evaluates websites and decides who gets to rank there. Because the way Google used to be was a place in which you'd have, say, 10 places available on the first page, and it was a zero-sum kind of game. So if somebody goes up there, it means that somebody else is pushed down. So if you were getting to rank, you were outranking somebody else. It's the most competitive, SEO is the most competitive kind of game that you can play. Google knows that, and they know that there is plenty of ways that people from time to time even try to manipulate the algorithm a little bit. So they have been over time developing new ways to refine results, always with the goal in mind of giving the best kind of user experience to their users. So those core algorithm updates that we see up there, and the most recent was the one in March that created really a strong series of ripple effects. They called it the helpful content update, and we put it the unhelpful because they were really penalizing unhelpful content, which is positive and it's good. They started striking really strongly websites that contained a lot of AI generated content, not in a nice hybrid way, but in an AI only kind of over reliance on churning content at scale. So that was definitely not helpful for the end users, the customers, and that has generated impacts and influences. So the algorithm is also, regardless of what the search engine is the way that they use to decide what goes in there. And how do they grade? What do they care about in the algorithm? What are the main elements that make a website rank? But there are many, but we know that they have three main pillars. And I sometimes call it a triangle. I sometimes call it a three-legged stool. You call it as you want. You think of the word SEO, three elements, three main segments to keep in mind. Coding, content, and links. The coding, I promise in these webinars, you might know I never go technical. I never explain anything in jargon. We deeply hate jargon, and we always try to keep everything as clear and layman's terms as possible. But from a coding perspective, if you think of the crawler bot, seeing the websites not as fancy colored website layout from front end, but seeing it as that boring strings of code. The code is something that needs to be completely flawless and seamless to navigate and contain all those elements in the checklist that they will be searching for, the fundamentals. Because in SEO, sometimes we try to reinvent the wheel, but even just thinking, have I used and included my best kind of possible keywords in the most important elements, the fundamental ones, the headings, the URLs, the descriptors, the images. You have no idea sometimes how many missed opportunities we spot. You think, for example, I don't know, you've got a furniture shop, you're selling armchairs, and instead of having as a main heading the type of armchair that you're selling, we might be seeing something like the dawn of a new era, which is quite poetic, but it doesn't tell the viewer or search engine that what it is that you're actually selling. So we're falling back a little bit into the hide and seek kind of game. So fundamentals still matter. And with AI in search, we know that they matter even more. And there is something that they have disclosed that matters a lot from a coding perspective, which is schema.org, the structured data. And schema.org isn't new either. It was launched, I think, more than 10 years ago, at the time when the search engines, the main search engines used to be Google, Yahoo, and Bing. They virtually met up and they decided this internet is going to become quite crowded. We need a shared vocabulary to better understand these websites, what they are for at a glance before scanning too deep. Let's develop a kind of shared coding language, which is JSON, and give some sort of instructions that can be embedded into a website, and we will immediately understand what this website is about. And nobody really cared much about schema.org. Most websites weren't featuring it until, again, now with AI, everybody's getting super excited about schema.org again because LLMs have disclosed that it is important. And in the medical field where you all are, there are some that are really nice. There is a medical clinic, a medical treatment, medical condition, medical symptoms. There are so many specific for the medicine field that should be injected in the code of the website so that Google can understand them much better, and we still see that it's not being used that much. So that again is quite a strong recommendation because LLMs have said that they rely quite a lot on schema. Page speed is another big classic. It shouldn't be new anymore. And we, as the first purveyors and users of websites, know firsthand how incredibly irritating it is when you try to load a website and it's not loading. And you're in a hurry, and then you end up just closing the site and moving into someone else. So there's plenty of free tests that you can run, plenty of different tools that you can use. There is a GTmetrix, there are many others. There is a Google's own page speed test. And I would recommend, since you're trying to please Google, to actually have run a test on that as well. And that features your page speed results like a traffic light, red, amber, or green. So you will see that it's always a little bit harder to get a better result on mobile rather than desktop. But if you're not in the green, at least let's try and be in the high ambers. If you see running the test that you are in the red, definitely get somebody to try and have a look at that, because Google doesn't really like it, and the LLMs don't do either. So from a coding perspective, there are many little implications, broken links, things that from a coding point of view, they're not particularly signal of a well-kept website. And users don't like it either. Usually what makes a website succeed from a user experience point of view makes it succeed from an SEO standpoint as well. So it's worth keeping in mind that if it's not good for user experience, like page speed is not, so page load, then it won't help your SEO either, or broken links, series of broken links on the website. So that's from the technical point of view. Now, content, as they used to say, content is king. Well, you being in a medical field, you are unfortunately in a little bit more of a challenging zone because Google is really strict with websites. They fall into a big bucket of three categories. They're medical, legal, and financial. They call these your money or your life, meaning that the kind of information that you are having onto your website can make a massive influence into normal people's lives. And the effects can be really, really impactful. For the best or for the worst. So they are really careful, and they have very high expectations as to the type of content that is out there. And they really demand to see content that is backed up by data and scientific references, links to resources. But at the same time, we also know how doctors might fall a little bit too much into an academic tone. So we need to try and find a nice balance between having all of that scientific reference and a tone of voice that still emphasizes with your patients and explains things without jargon in layman's terms in a way that they can understand, regardless of their level of education or background. And as for, oh, I noticed this is swapped. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be here. So as for content, the other element that really matters, and Google summarizes it with this acronym, EEAT. So it's expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness. So Google will reward a website that has a difference than the others. As we were saying, that they won't like something that is vanilla flavored, just churned out by the AI. They will definitely reward with a better ranking, something that is unique and bespoke your angle, something that transparently transmits the knowledge that you have accumulated, the experience and expertise in the niche. So why you have developed this kind of angle and approach to treating certain conditions in a certain way. All of the history of accreditations and titles that you have accumulated in your author pages and in your about pages and in your author elements at the end of the blogs that you're publishing. Anything that will make you trustworthy, as in you belonging to associations or industry publications, having been done research, all of the elements that can generate trust, they will be incredibly rewarded if featured on websites in the medical field in these times. And as for what type of content wins, yes, we're seeing that informative content is giving you some return on investment, particularly if found on large language models. But what people will still keep needing are transactional lead generation pages. So don't neglect giving space to exactly the treatments that you do, the conditions that you treat, the type of specific services that you can provide, because those are the ones that somebody with a transactional intent would be searching for when they want to fix something. They're not just about inquiring for information. They will be searching for that. And then you can create a sort of cluster of information around that treatment page. So you can have any transactional page surrounded and strengthened by a series of internal links throughout articles, all the why, how, when, where, but they need to basically power in little clusters of content the core offering, that is what you give this kind of treatment in a specific page that is very strong and meaningful. The final element into what can make a difference for your site to rank or not is the backlinks. So backlinks are the third-party websites linking to yours, pointing to yours like a link. And this makes a difference because it's like when you're trying to find a business, say, I don't know, you need an accountant, and you start asking around who's the best. If you get some recommendations, then some names might stick into your memory. Say, for example, I don't know, a couple of friends recommend the same person, then okay, this is memorable. If somebody who's even more important, like your partner or family member recommends the same person, then you definitely want to have a conversation with them. Same thing happens with Google. There are so many websites that they can choose from that it becomes important to see who is being endorsed by others. So if there are websites pointing to yours with a link, it can be colleagues, it can be people that you partner with. Say, for example, I don't know, you specialize in nutrition and somebody specializes in sports medicine. There is a kind of connection. If you do physiotherapy together with an orthopedic surgeon, there are some connections that you can develop in between the websites. So the practices are connected, and you can find a way to connect your websites as well in between content, in the way you're advising. So your websites are interlinked this way, and you're kind of strengthening both of them. If anything, one thing that I really recommend you remember out of this is never buy links, because we all receive every day unsolicited emails saying, I will get you on the first page of Google tomorrow. And what happens, aside from the fact that easy promises are usually worrying, is the fact that they are trying to sell you links. And buying links violates Google guidelines, and going against guidelines these times can easily get your website penalized, and recovering from a penalization is really long and painful. So don't buy backlinks. If you have a low domain authority, a low domain trust on your website, try to develop your links via very strong, interesting content that you develop and might want to be linked to by others, or even doing PR. So getting featured as a thought leadership piece in, I don't know, an industry magazine, being featured in a podcast, an interview, something that can make a difference and make sure that people will be seeing you associated with reputable businesses, but that you haven't been buying, because when you buy links, it's easy to spot that they all come usually from the same kind of IP farms and their websites that have been created just for the sake of generating these links. Google will consider them as toxic links, and you might in the end even have to disavow some of these links because you might have to tell Google that you don't want to be associated with people that have any even paid some money to be in there. So definitely never buying links. That falls into the black hat kind of SEO practices that we never recommend. So aside from this, we are coming to an end. We are coming to the point in which I'm welcoming your questions. I'm curious to see if there's anything out of what we have discussed that you would be curious to ask now that I'm here. If there's anything in general from these interaction we should stop to around AI is piquing your curiosity, or if you think of anything later, you can ask via email. If you've seen this as a recording, feel free to send me an email, and I would love to keep the conversation open. This is the QR code that I was promising. If you scan it, we will be glad to have an in-depth look at your website and give you an opinion as to what it's ranking for, what keywords are driving your traffic really now, what are not ranking, so we can discuss why. If there are any major errors that we're spotting that you might not have seen, it's a lot of valuable advice. It's completely for free for you. 1 hour of conversation giving you all of the ins and outs of what we're finding on the site. And now I'd be curious to hear from you. Basically, if there's anything that stood out, that you found interesting, that you discovered, some aha moments, or something you're curious to ask, let me know. I'm just here. And I hope I haven't killed you with so many information. Hi, so do you want to ask your question?
So we have a couple of questions asked in the chat here, Sylvia.
Yeah.
The first one from Ed. How does social media activity feed into LLM models and search engines? Which social media channels have the most impact?
Well, what we have seen, first of all, hi Ed, thank you for the question. What we have seen that is particularly generating an impact in LLMs are discussions, open channels for discussion. So Reddit, for example, we've seen that they are pulling because they are wanting to check what the people's conversation are around. So aside from the voice of the brands, they want to see the voice of normal people. So they will put information from the official sources, i.e. the websites, but they will also want to hear what people are saying about that. And the majority of the conversations are happening at the moment, depending on what the industry is. In the medical field is not that much LinkedIn, for example. It can be more, in some cases, if there is a series of recommendations happening around specific treatments or products on, say, LinkedIn, there is a tendency to also discover products and trends on TikTok, but these are kind of new trends and they need to develop a bit of time, particularly based on what the audience is and what they tend to use the most. But platforms of discussion like Reddit, they are now really being used by brands to push some of the right kind of information up there. And Joe, you're asking how much we can trust AI sites and what happens to our data. Well, we need to be careful from the medical practitioner point of view. You have your compliance and duty of care, so you know that there is a lot of information that must not be even up there. So, because they are learning from our interactions. So trusting the AI is something that we always need to be doing in a critical way. So they are famous and known for making things up. So whenever we are using them, we need to rely but not over rely. So we need, particularly in a very, very sensitive and delicate field like medicine, you always have to revise very carefully what they're saying and making sure that it's aligned with your position, with your angle, with your approach. Don't take it for granted. And even when you are feeding your knowledge, your little gold nuggets of information, make sure that it's as possible, as anonymized as can be, because it will be better regulated, and they're doing some improvements, some steps, but it's still way under regulated compared to what it should be. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything you'd like to ask, or anything that just stood out of the conversation that you discovered and you learned? Paul, we do have somebody who sent a message who couldn't be here and they wanted to know something.
Yeah, we've got a couple of email questions. The first one around Google AI overviews, I believe this is. If we're a small clinic or independent practice, how can we still show up well in Google or AI search results, especially when big companies seem to dominate?
Yeah, well, it's been the issue with most of the SEO activity that we have seen over the years is how can we stand and take a position against the big players. The answer to that is always segmenting, so finding your own specific niche. And with Google rankings, it used to be being as laser focused as possible, because again, when we are trying to rank for specific keywords, the more vague the keyword is, the harder it is to rank, because you're competing against many more. It's like running a race and you're racing against hundreds of thousands of other possible runners. Instead, if you're closing up a little bit the gap and you are trying to only rank against your real competitors, adding elements to the tail of the keyword. So say, again, making an example with shoes, if you're trying to rank for white shoes, then shoes, it can be anything and everything from the history of shoes, the shoes in the world and whatever it is. Then you add another element and you say white shoes, then you're limiting a little bit, but it can still be, I don't know, wedding shoes or trainers. And then you add another element and you're saying, I want white tennis. And you keep adding elements like white tennis shoes, size 5, brand X. Then at that moment, whoever is searching for that kind of query is so really focused that they basically have a credit card right next to the mouse. So it's really narrowing down and trying not to speak with the many, but with the few who are really interested. So going really focused and deep will diminish the number of people that find you, but will make the conversion funnel so much easier because they are more likely to convert. So at the same time, this can happen with the LLMs because we are having these kind of contextual results now, all customized around the conversations that we have with the tools. So the more important, the more detailed kind of information we give, the more we actually explain what we do, how we do it, who it is for, who is our custom audience, who is the ideal patient that you want to see, who do you think that could be, if you have your ideal patients that you want to see more of, who they are, I don't know, private payment instead of insurance, all of the various elements detailed in there, and then the match can be easier. So you're not just trying to rank in general against everyone, because in that case, the big players will always win because they have the highest number of backlinks and they're popular and they're easier to trust. If you go niche, then you can really stand out because of your unique USP. Does it make sense? Does anybody have anything? Paul? Did we get another one? We might still make in time. We have 3 more minutes.
Yep, I think this is a good one, sort of addressing the anxiety around AI. So, you mentioned that we might get more awareness even if fewer people visit our website. How would we know if that's actually happening?
If they are actually finding the site, well, it's fundamental to become more fluent with tracking tools, because we end up doing things and not measuring the results. So we might be spending a lot of time, I don't know, writing articles and not even measuring if they're generating any traffic. So tools like Google Analytics, for example, they're free. They're given at disposal, available for every website owner. All you have to do is connect tracking code onto your website, and every developer can do it for you. And then it's the healthy habit of measuring it and checking it, say every week. It's like going on a weight scale. If you do it every day, you get addicted and you won't really see any valuable change, because things can fluctuate a little bit. But say once a month, once every week, seeing how your traffic is changing and if your efforts are actually giving you any kind of return. Because if it's not, you might be wasting your time and your activities into something that isn't really worth dedicating passion to. So it's worth whatever you do. If you decide to follow, I don't know, a social media channel, everybody says you should be on YouTube. Is it generating you traffic? Everybody says TikTok is the thing to go now. Is it generating you something? So you need to have some KPIs, some metrics, and same for LLMs. You will find them under referrals on Google Analytics, search of sorts of acquisition referrals. So you will find your LLMs in there, starting ChatGPT. They're starting to appear even more. Perplexity, Claude. You will start seeing some traffic coming from there, and that means that they're starting to find you. It's the beginning of a new movement that is happening. So yeah, I am aware that the time that we had available is sadly run out. I hope this was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. If it helped and gave you any nuggets of information, then I did it was worth it, and I did a good job. I'm really, really happy that so you here. If you have any questions, feel free to pop me a message, send me an email. We can keep chatting if you're watching this in the recording in the next few days. Let's keep talking, and otherwise we will see you again. If you want to join one of the next ones, we will have webinars again every month, restarting from September, and it's always usually the first Thursday of the month. So we will send you information. We will notify you of the next topic. If you have any preference for the next topics, we've been developing these ones here around your recommendations. Or if you want to watch the recording of some of the previous ones and you missed them, send an email and we can send. They're all recorded and available. Thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful to see you all again. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye, everyone.